So this week, unexpectedly, the focus went to the bees. As you can see here, I'm collecting some that's a swarm that we got called about. So I had to do so much of the bees, I decided that's what we do with this week's video. We did do some other things, and if you're interested in how the keyhole is doing this week, since I like to do those updates, I will put it at the end of this video, and you can go to the timestamp that'll be on your screen right now if I do what I'm supposed to do. But for most of this, we're going to talk about bees. And this is a swarm that we got called about really the day before this, like late at night. Wasn't enough time to get everything together and go get them, but I was like, if they're there tomorrow, we'll come and get them. My girlfriend's sisters. And we went there the next day, and there they were, still on the ground. They were a little hard to find because they were on the ground. This is a pain in the butt way to have to do it, in my opinion. But I'd rather than be on a limb I can cut off and shake in. But they were on the ground, and so the way I dealt with that, not all of this is filmed because it was raining and I was just busy. But the way that I dealt with that was got some cardboard and looked around in the pile on the ground and figured out where I was 99% sure the queen was, and just scooped all those bees in that area just because of how they were reacting is how I determined that I thought the queen was there, and got them in the box. And it looks like I was correct about that because the bees started going. I did use a little bit of Swarm Commander too to help things along, and as you can see here too, I also was sometimes helping them towards the box with some cardboard. This took quite a long time. If this was at like our house, once I see them start going in there, I probably would have walked off and just come back a few hours later and seen what happened. We couldn't leave them there all night or didn't want to. So I was trying to speed up the process. So at this point, we mostly just waited. You can see they really wanted to beard up. One thing I did do is I did come around. You don't really fit on here. So I had to stop because there was some rain. I didn't want my phone to get wet. I did come around with cardboard, and a lot of times when they bearded, I would open the top, scoop them in to hurry the process along. Also, just in case I was wrong and she wasn't in there and she was actually bearding on the side. They continued to make their way in, not as fast as I would have liked, but fast enough. And as you can see by this point, they're mostly in. So I let them go a little bit longer, tried to get a few more of them to go in there. But not long after this, I filled up the hive with some cardboard and some tape. Used a come along strap to close it really well and put it in the back of my truck and took it home. That night, there was no footage of it, but I went ahead and sat it up in place that night where it was going to be, and went back out after the sun went down and pulled that cardboard off the front of it so that when they woke up in the morning, they could do their first flight. And obviously, if that was all, it wouldn't be bee week. But we got another package of bees in. This is my second time putting a package in. One of the problems that came up with this, though, because we caught that swarm, is I didn't have another. So I put together two mediums, which I've done with swarms I've caught at the house before, but obviously, since this is my second package, I'd not done it that way before. And I'm no expert at putting in packages, but I feel like it's pretty good footage of me putting one in. So the first thing I'm doing after I pull off the top is pulling out the queen to check her. And that is a very full package. And I've checked the queen. Now you can check the queen, and she's in there with her little entourage. And all that's really left for me to do is pull off that little metal tab. They'll be able to eat the candy or out. So what I'm doing now is I'm attaching the queen cage to a frame. This one's got some honeycomb on it. I'm okay with that because these all came from my hives and my bees. The thing is you want to make sure that that screen is not pressed up against anything. I actually flipped that a different way, and I actually left the frame out because of how tight that hive ended up being. They make fancy queen clips for that. A rubber band works just as well, obviously. At least that's what everyone else on the internet I saw did. So as you can see, here's where I started running into some difficulty. I wasn't sure what was going on with that can. That's a syrup can for feeding the bees. At first, I thought maybe it was stuck in there. What I came to realize as I work on it is that that can is almost completely full, which means that these bees have not been together in that package long, and in storytelling, we call that foreshadowing. And finally, after what seems like an eternity, I get it out. And as I said, it's full. Like, absolutely full. But now we're to the fun part. Only one thing left to do. Well, there's many things. But it's time to shake the bees. Just shake, shake, shake your bees. All you're doing, dumping them in there. Now I did do this one a little bit differently, and you'll see here in a second. Since I was putting them in 2 mediums and not 1 deep, I shook some in the bottom first. This is the point where I realized, like, oh, I should just put 1 frame in there, not 2. And where I remember, like, oh, I probably shouldn't do the cage like that. I should turn it like that. I felt much better about turning it like that. Wanting to make sure that it's positioned just right for her, not too much space, but making sure that she can breathe. And now we're going to put, like I said, we're going to shake them in this top box. Once I make room for them. And now we're right back to it, shaking in our bees. And yes, that is a very dirty frame, but it is what it is. Shake, shake, shake. Shake your bees. Shake your bees. They don't get upset about this, really. They fly around, but they're not, they're only aggressive when they're protecting something. That's when they're really aggressive. And they're not protecting anything here. Here they're just moving into a new place. They're actually still looking, which I guess we can say is more foreshadowing. Trying to get as many shook out as I can. But eventually you reach a limit with that, and what I've seen everybody else do is you just set it up there at the entrance of the hive. Hope they make their way in to the queen. Now I'm putting in the sugar syrup that I made for them. Because that feeder is for a medium and not a deep, I'll have to probably check it more often, is my thinking as I'm putting it in. But it's going in, and we're going to finish closing up that hive once I got it seated in there, which sometimes takes a little work, especially when you're using stuff with burr comb on it. But we'll close up the hive, and now again, it's just a waiting game. And here, as far as I can tell, everything's fine. My bees are flying around. Looks like they're going in the box. I'm doing some cleanup. I'm going to leave my phone here to record footage. Just to capture, really for like, cause I was already like, all right, I might as well do a video about bees at this point, since that's all I've done. And it's just waiting. I did decide, since there was so much syrup in that can, that I would very carefully add it to the feeder. If I used the last of the syrup I had in this feeder and didn't get it quite as full as I wanted. So I left it there and just made sure none of it got into the hive anywhere where it was going to bother the bees. And once that was done, I closed them back up to let them begin to keep migrating in there, and also to keep any from flying out the top. And as far as I'm concerned at this point while I'm doing this, all is well with our new hives. But all was not really well. Because, they're all flying around, but I don't know how easy to tell from the video, they aren't necessarily going in. And I've noticed some, that they're kind of all over my bee yard. And obviously I'm thinking like, hey, like, remember, like, they hadn't eaten much syrup, so they probably weren't together in that package for very long enough to really get the clean scent. And sure enough, by the time we get to this point, and you can't see it, and I didn't take footage because I obviously had other concerns at the time, many of these bees, I would say most of these bees, are bearding on the hive on the other end of the yard that is the swarm I just caught. I guess they caught scent of that queen. Maybe there was still a scent of the swarm commander. I'm not sure. But most of those bees, the vast majority, have moved over to that hive. That hive was incredibly overcrowded. So me as a new beekeeper, I go and I look. You're like, oh yeah, this happens all the time. Maybe they weren't in there long enough. Maybe they just liked the other queen more. There's any number of reasons, but no one's really like, well, you should do this, other than like, oh, you should definitely get that queen to another hive because she's all alone. She wasn't all alone. She had her entourage. She had a few around her. So I did some time thinking, and what I ended up deciding to try to do is the first night I went in after all the bees were in, when it was still a little light out, and I took some of the bees that had gone over to that hive because it was so overcrowded, and I shook them back into this hive. See if that would take it. Putting them back in the hive at night when they don't really want to fly, they would stay there. They would get used to the scent of the queen, who was still in her cage, by the way. Safe, but just have their entourage around her, and see if that worked. And the next day, we took a look at that. The next day, we can see the bee yard. They're kind of flying everywhere. The white hive is our problem hive, as you can see the package there. The green hive is the swarm I caught and flew into the package I installed about 3 or 4 weeks ago that luckily is doing really, really well. I can't tell how many of the bees have taken to that hive that I shook in there, or if any really changed their mind. I go a little closer to take a look. And like I said, they're flying around everywhere. You don't see me do it, but I open the top, so I see bees in there. Again, I can't tell if they're robbing or not. The queen's still in her cage. So I decided that I'm going to leave them as is for the moment and come back out in the evening. sun is getting closer to going down. It's a little cooler and they don't want to fly around because I have one last idea too. What I find that evening is that there is a cluster of bees around that queen cage. They're not all over the hive. There's some few in there, but there's a really tight cluster of bees who have obviously accepted that queen and are trying to get her out of there. But they don't really look like enough bees. And I don't want to shake some in again to have them get out. I don't want to accidentally shake the queen from the other hive in. But what I decided to do is I decided to try to do the thing that I would have done were all these hives not new and I had an older hive. So as I said, the hive that I installed 3 weeks ago is doing really well, and there's actually 2 full frames of brood in there. The only issue is that those frames are deep frames, not medium frames. So I decided that we're going to adjust a little bit because one deep frame is a little smaller than 2 medium. So I pull a frame out of the bottom box, and directly over top of that frame, I pull another frame out of the top box, and I flip this full frame of brood in there. Now, the other hive has plenty of bees. There's at least another frame and a half of cat brood in there. She's laid plenty of eggs. I'm not too worried about it. It'll slow that hive down a little bit, but I think this full frame of brood will hopefully be enough to get this hive to survive. I think what we'll probably do to find out is you'll have to wait till the next bee week, which we might do this like once a month now, just so I don't have to keep thinking of new ideas to do for videos. So if you're interested in that, like and subscribe. You'll see what happened to the hives. So a keyhole update, as promised. I'm not sure what's more amazing, is if you fast forward through everything just to watch this, or if you watched everything and are still watching this. But thank you. But we're here in the keyhole taking a look at what's going on here. Foxgloves have come back, which is good because they're biannuals most of the time. And that means we finally got the feeding cycle right, to where we hopefully will have them every year. Picked up some African daisies. This is one of them, and put them in. Trying to put a few more things in, not wait so long for things to fill in that I know are coming. I think we looked at that last time, but that's a nice, pretty pink color. That's going to be fun. I said more foxglove. The storm cloud I was worried about is really coming back in. The lavenders have not come back, it doesn't seem, but we'll figure something out there. This is our other African daisy. Some of the dahlias are coming back. Of course, the sorrel we've talked about before, and we're having more sorrel, which is good. It's actually multiplying in places, popping up. That's how it propagates. And then we have, of course, the Persian blue catnip. And I'm really happy with it this year. We're also trying again these guys. I can't remember their actual name, but they're like touch of red, touch of pink, touch of white. They didn't really grow like they should have last year, but I also planted them really late. So we planted all that stuff as soon as we got it. We'll see how they do. We got a few things that are potted up to see if they do better if I buy them market packs and pot them up. But already these are bigger than they turned out to be last year. But yeah, this is always it's not my favorite place to sit in the garden when I'm out here working in the heat, take a break in the shade. And for the keyhole garden coming along again this year, better and better every year, and we'll update you again on it next week. Thank you for watching. Get out there and enjoy some gardening.